The Strays is a 2023 horror film directed by Nathaniel Martello-White. It came out on Netflix last Wednesday, and we have just finished watching it. And as a special treat, I thought I'd bring my partner Chris along today to give us his thoughts. So we've been very strict. We finished the film about 20 minutes ago. I've been scrabbling around looking for a microphone and a place to film this video, and giving us time to mull over what we thought of this film, which up to today had got really good reviews. So I have some thoughts about that. We are probably going to steer into sort of spoiler territory at some point in this video. We might just try and cover off a few basics and give you our verdicts before we go into like the spoilers. But yeah, we'll let you know as and when, because I think there's kind of a few things to discuss which will need to spoil the film in order to give you a full kind of representation of our views, so to speak. But yes, Chris, I think I know the answer, but what did you think of The Strays?
It started off strong. I was very much into it in the beginning, but towards the end it kind of just snowballed into a place where I found myself very frustrated and there wasn't much payoff.
Cool. That's good. I lost my patience probably a bit earlier. So I sort of suspected what this was going to be. So there was a series called The Stranger, based on a Harlan Coben novel about 4 years ago, which is an American novel set in America but adapted and set in the UK. And there was also a series recommended to me last year called Chloe, which very similar, very American sort of style setup, but set in this sort of twee village style area of the UK. And it's like a genre in itself, and it drives me insane. And it presents this vision of Britain that doesn't exist.
It's very BBC drama.
It was
Gritty BBC drama. I kind of had a feeling of a series rather than a film. I think I said this while we were watching it. It's
the sort of thing where everyone lives in a gorgeous house. They all have beautiful kitchens. Everyone drives Land Rovers. And it's a version of Britain that just, I don't know, for me it doesn't exist. It's not a thing. And I don't know whether they have British people making these things or Americans making what they think Britain is supposed to look like. Part of me thinks it's actually Brits making them, trying to make it look glossy and high end. And I'm like, we live in Britain. It's just not like it.
It's like a rose-tinted view of what maybe we like to think we live like.
Yeah.
We all have beautiful country mansions with sprawling open-plan kitchens and bottles of vintage red wine just casually strewn across the dinner table every night. It's really not that. It's yeah.
So yeah, that was like getting to me straight away, because I went into this thinking that's what this was going to be like. And the Stranger, that thing that was on Netflix 4 years ago, was fine. It was entertaining. This was entertaining, and like it whipped along, and like stuff happened. I just kind of knew that's what it was going to be. And I know that it's probably part of the film, and this will probably come in spoilers, but the characters are so bland. Like, there's no banter, there was no fun, there was no regional accent to be heard. And again, I know that's the point, and we'll come on to like what the film's about. But it was all very sanitized, and yeah, we'll come on to it. In terms of the plot synopsis, it's an odd one, and again, this is probably not spoilers. Basically, there's a woman that lives in this gorgeous little village town, and she's got what's described in the synopsis as a perfect life, which I would dispute. But she has a perfect life, and then something or someone comes along to disrupt the perfection that is her life. So that's the film, and yeah, I'm trying to think what else we say now before we kind of dive into spoilers. I got to say, I thought it was pretty average.
I think it had a lot of potential, but I feel like they caught themselves a bit in terms of trying to build suspense, especially in the last half an hour, which dragged on. I felt like it was all trying to raise the stakes and make this a big finale, and I feel like they lost sight of maybe the message of the film a little bit at the end. They were trying to make it more grandiose, and I just found myself kind of just wanting it to hurry up and make a statement, and then it ended, and I kind of felt a little bit like you kind of didn't finish your essay there.
Had a rare moment for me where I actually screamed out "What?" when the title card came up. Like, I haven't done that since I first watched Mulholland Drive, which I love, but when that ended, it was a similar reaction, but for very different reasons. Of like, that cannot be the end. Can we dive into spoilers? Because I feel like look, I mean, I'm not going to recommend it. It's on Netflix. If you've got Netflix, it's kind of fine to throw on, but this is an ITV drama or a BBC drama. This probably would have been better off strung out over 6 episodes, and we'll come on to spoilers about why that is. So cut to the last 20-30 seconds of the video if you want to see a score, but from this point forward I think we'll go into spoiler territory.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so what I found, and I kind of talked about the fact that there's this woman with this perfect life. She was miserable, and that family so her new family. So basically, the plot is there's this woman who, the beginning, she's like, I want a better life for myself. So she just walks out on her kids. There's no real explanation of how she achieves that, because one assumes that you don't just walk out on your kids and suddenly have the ability to get a degree, to teach, to better yourself. There's no way of knowing how she actually achieved that. Am I being weird in expecting to see that?
No, but then this is a theme in this film. Like, there's a lot of things which don't quite make sense practically, and I think even if you try and not think about those kind of loopholes in the film, it still feels like you're missing a lot. And maybe that's one of them. It's suddenly this massive jump from where she's in this position where her life feels like it's falling apart to where she's got this massive house and a family and everything. And I mean, I wouldn't say things are going pretty well for her. It sounds like she is pretty miserable. And I feel like maybe this is almost a shock to her family. Like, things seem to be fine with everything, but she's got this constant sadness in her, which maybe is a reflection of she's left behind a life she didn't really want to leave behind, but she felt she was forced to.
Which would be fine for me if the family acted as if she was being miserable. The family act like this is just normal. They don't feel like people that like each other, know each other, are related to each other. There's no warmth, there's no banter, everything's like, oh, hello, hi mum, yeah, going out now mum, see you later, all in that kind of accent. Like, there's no fun, there's no sense of like, she gave up her kids to go and get, and maybe, I don't know whether that's supposed to be the message.
I think that it's intentional for her to appear miserable and unfulfilled because perhaps she left a life and she's had to suppress her heritage, she feels like, to be able to get to the position where she is now, which is why in the film she tends to resent any signs of her kids showing that they know about their heritage or they want to express themselves, like with the black hairstyles. So I think the reason why she's perhaps looking so kind of torn is because she's torn herself in where she is now.
And I think, and we sort of spoke about before we did this video, was, do we talk about the black themes? I think we both kind of agreed, not really. Like, they're not really themes for us to discuss. We're not the experts. But I think what made the themes not pop for me was there was no light and shade. Like, she just was a miserable character. The family were boring. Like, every character was kind of bland and just, they were there to fulfill a part of the plot.
There wasn't a great deal of character development. I think that was something lacking. You didn't feel any form of attachment to any member of the family, even the kids who, you know, in comparison to everyone else in the film, had more character.
Yeah.
But there wasn't enough time spent on each one.
Like, teenagers are fun. Yeah. Teenagers are snarky and like take the piss out of their parents. Like, why weren't they taking the piss out of her? Like, she was ridiculous. Like, there was just, I don't know, it was just I thought it was a very po-faced film. It took itself really seriously for what was pretty much a potboiler. Like, it was a bit of a pulpy, like, silly crime novel that you'd read on the beach, and they've made it into a TV show. I think there were themes that could have been explored, but they were like surface level. It was like, oh, she's black and she's ashamed of her black life, so now she's gonna be white. That was essentially it for me. I just don't think it went much deeper than that.
I mean, I feel like that's a topic which you can, you know, is an important topic and you can express in film and TV, but I don't feel like it did it well enough. It should have taken perhaps even a stronger stance than it did, but it was just very almost one-dimensional. You needed a little bit more, you know, depth to that character and how they played the storyline out. It just felt very much, you know, you could expect everything that was going to happen. Nothing was really a surprise.
Yeah. I think it was quite cliched as well. I think it was a shooter. So I was like, this is going to be a dream. The music's building to a big crescendo and cut, and it's a dream. Oh, she's woken up from a nightmare. Or like there's a weird scene where the son has gone off with the son who's come back, and they're sat on a roof, and it's again a bit unclear of why the kid's bonding with this guy so much. He's just a caretaker at school, and they've had one interaction, and suddenly, I don't know. And then he goes, oh, look over the edge, and you're like, well, why would he do that? And then he wets himself, like he's literally gushing urine from the leg of his trousers. And it's like, I've seen that in horror films so many times, of character who's scared wets themselves. Like you literally said, and I agreed, like I've never wet myself through fear. Like, I'm being pernickety, but it was just like, oh my God, grow up.
I feel like I understood perhaps the bond that they formed initially in the school. So I mean, this is full spoilers, but the guy who the caretaker is in the film approaches this boy who's being bullied essentially because of the colour of his skin, and he's like, we have to stick together kind of thing with him, and they form this bond and they talk, and then they have this moment where he offers him a cigarette and tries to get him to loosen up a bit, and then there's a scene you mentioned where he's standing on top of this great big building and gets him to look over the edge. My thought process behind that was he's trying to see how much trust he has with this kid, to see perhaps if he could use him almost as a weapon against the woman in the film who's actually their mother. It's both their mother.
But they did nothing with it.
But they did nothing with it. This is what I mean. So it's like,
why?
That's what it appeared to be on surface level, but nothing kind of came about from that. And that happened a few times.
Well, it happened with the girl characters as well. She was like, I'll invite her around, I'll give her access to my clothes, I'll style her hair. It was almost like exactly what you're saying. Like there's a reason why they're trying to prime them. They're trying to almost groom them in a very different way. We don't normally interpret that word. And then there was just no payoff to it. It really just, it felt like, you know what, I thought actually in terms of a concept for a film, I thought it was really interesting.
This is the thing, I feel like the film had potential. Like you could have gone so many places with this and taken more time to develop the characters, and perhaps maybe this is why it could have been better suited to a series where each episode would focus on a different character.
And you get to know them. Yeah, they add light and shade to each character. You understand the motivation of why she left. You find out how she got a new life and married. And you're right, it absolutely could have been a good six-parter.
Because I feel like even there were moments where I felt myself thinking, are we meant to feel sorry for this woman? Because it's true, she's come from a background where she may have experienced a lot of racism and that held her back in life. And now, she's had to force herself to be someone who she maybe truly isn't to get where she is. And she feels like her livelihood and her family are constantly at risk, because if she's returns back to how she was before, she could lose everything again.
And I did think it was weird. I know this is really nitpicking, but she's if we're thinking that she suffered from racism, that's what motivated her to leave. Why would she leave London, which is one of the most multicultural cities in the world, to go and live in Wiltshire? Because that's where she ended up. And it's like she's still clearly mixed race. It's not like they're hiding it in any way. I just thought, why is the coffee machine going off? Right, hang on. So yeah, I think with this film, I think one thing we've probably alluded to before is we're clearly white men, and I think that does give a limit of maybe the appreciation of the themes of the film, which, fair enough. I think it might be that other people have different perspectives on it, and it makes it quite a tricky one to navigate, because it's sort of areas about life, areas of experience that we don't have. So I think, yeah, there are probably themes that you could dig into. That said, I don't think that excuses the film. I think it was still underwritten, and I still think a series would have been better to really draw out the themes properly and do a sort of decent job of it. I thought it was quite surface level in terms of the things they dealt with.
Yeah, exactly. This is my point as well. I think a theme which is actually so important, they don't spend enough time developing, and they sacrifice, maybe going into more depth with this theme for adding suspense into the film to make it a good horror film, which unfortunately I don't think I found it as a good horror film. It was frustrating, it was drawn out, and it was predictable. You could tell everything they were doing, and there were lots of false setups throughout the film where you think they're trying to do something, and then later on in the film you're like, why did they do that? And I'm still thinking about certain points within the film of why certain things happened, because it doesn't seem like there was a conclusion to those plots. So it's like, I feel like the writers had these ideas of things they could have put into the film, and then they would just cut and thought, well, we've filmed certain sections of this already, so we're just going to have to leave it in.
Yeah.
And it will add to maybe this sense of enigma and curiosity, but...
And it was a short film, right? Because I mean,
it didn't feel like it.
If I see an hour and a half, I'm like, woohoo, here we go. Like, this is great. I love a 90-minute efficient movie, which I think I've said before. This needed a bit more time. Like, they could have afforded another 10, 15 minutes of stuff. But I think I agree with you. There was so little logic to it. And there was, the whole ending. I will call out the ending. We're in spoiler territory. I'm not going to necessarily say what happened. I will credit the film for having the balls to do what it did, because I thought actually the ending was kind of a like, what the fuck moment. But it kind of, I don't know, it almost for me proved what we were thinking all the time, which is this woman is a dick. This woman is just awful. And that whole last 5 minutes of her, like, things happen with her husband, which doesn't make her kids look particularly good either. She's very casual about stuff.
But I think that's part of her character. They're trying to say that, she is this way because of her past experience. So you could argue it's not her fault she is the way she is. She has come from a life of strife and has had to change herself drastically to fit into a new life, which she feels is more sustainable for her and her family who she has now.
I just don't think we knew that. We weren't given enough much of her background. We didn't know a lot of her struggles before.
But perhaps the context is enough.
Yeah, I think there's lots we could talk about. As I said before, I probably wouldn't recommend it as a great watch. It's a Netflix original, which always makes me a little bit suspicious. I think they really have a great quality control at Netflix. So should we do an average? I'm going to give this a 4. Like I feel bad. I did think this was going to be really good. I've seen reviews of 4 out of 5 and 8 out of 10, and I'm like, what were you watching? It needed a good few script rewrites and a bit of a rethink, I think.
Yeah, I think it started off strong, and I was really invested in it until 3/4 of the way through, and they started kind of drawing the plot out in a way that was just frustrating and didn't really add much to it other than suspense. So I agree. I would give it a 4 as well. I think it just felt like it had more to give, and it didn't, and it fell a bit flat in the end.
Yeah. Anyway, fun. We will be going to see Cocaine Bear, which I think will be very, very different. We're seeing that on Tuesday night, so we will be absolutely. I think that's probably going to be a little less heavy in the theme side, but probably a lot more on the horror. That's what I've heard. So we will see you later in the week. Thanks for watching.